This is FBX Ingestion class. And basically, we're talking about static meshes mostly, and we're going to also get into skeletal meshes, etc. So I know a lot of you guys know a lot about all this stuff already, but just to be sure, for recordings and such, I wanted to get into, a little bit like, what is a static mesh? Well, a mesh is something that is created in 3D modeling program, otherwise known as a DCC or digital content creation software. A static mesh is one that is static or does not typically move, such as a prop, a building, or some other type of environment asset. Now, this is different than a skeletal mesh, which is a mesh that's rigged with a skeleton or bone structure and a set of controls it allows it to be animated, such as a character, vehicle, weapon, or some other object that has moving parts. Now, as animators, I'm sure you're familiar, but I just wanted to make sure that we could review the terminology to ensure we're all on the same page. All right, so there are many sources that you can get import static meshes from, including the marketplace, which is found in the Epic Games launcher. You guys saw this already. Also, you could use the Quixel Megascans library. They can be built and imported from a DCC such as Maya, Max, Cinema 4D, or Blender, or imported from someplace like Mixamo, TurboSquid, or another online source. Now, static meshes can be exported as various file types, but FBX is the recommended file type for Unreal Engine. So I did mention the Epic Games launcher. So just a quick show here, Unreal Engine Marketplace. This is where you find them. You can search here. When you click here, you can check out a bunch of filters as well. And as I think people had mentioned in the past, it's a good idea to check this every month, as they do have a free for the month section. You'll see I've got all of these already for this month. It's great to go and check this out. A lot of cool stuff is available for you. And there's some stuff that's free in these other sections as well. So that's one great place to get stuff. All right, so go ahead and get into our outline. So some of the topics we're going to be talking about today. So first of all, we're going to talk about, why FBX, exporting the FBX files from a DCC app, how to do that, importing and re-importing them into Unreal Engine 5. Also, some different considerations that you're going to want to look at before you get started in your DCC and before you export. Things like units and scale, the naming conventions, combining objects, whether or not you want to do that, and material IDs, pivot points. Also, you're going to want to keep an eye on your triangle count. We're going to talk about things like LODs and nanite, which is a cool new feature in Unreal Engine 5. Making minor adjustments using modeling tools. So modeling tools is a somewhat recent development as well. It's great. You can actually do some basic adjustments inside of Unreal Engine without having to use a DCC. We're going to look at texture UVs and light map UVs, setting those up, and collisions. And then there's different ways to set up collisions. You can set them up before you export. There's automated methods and there's manual methods. We'll look at all those. And then we're going to go into skeletal meshes. We're going to do a quick, I know typically this class is before the intro to animation class. I know you looked a lot at that already. So we're just going to do a quick review on that, importing skeletal mesh, importing some animations. And then we'll look at a couple of features. One is called import into level. And that actually allows you to keep the hierarchy of an object. Like, say, for instance, you have a vehicle or something that has moving parts, and you want to be able to manipulate those parts, say each wheel having its own pivot point, etc. So we'll talk about that. We'll show you how to do that. And then we'll go into a brand new thing called interchange, which is another method of importing and soon exporting, which basically is going to help with specific file types that weren't really supported that well before. It's a quicker way to use things like Alembic files, OBJ files, etc. So we'll be getting into all that. Let's see. So a little quick, little history on FBX. So first of all, why FBX, right? So FBX contains information on geometry, appearance, animations, collisions, and LODs, all wrapped into one. So it's really helpful. It's a really optimized file type for Unreal Engine. And a little history behind it. So it was created by Kidara Filmbox, which Kidara is Filmbox software, so FBX. That's why it was named that way. And this later became Motion Builder, which I'm sure a lot of you know. And then later software was bought by Autodesk. So this has become very common to many DCC or 3D applications. And it's great for individual asset imports, though it's not always the best for importing, say, an entire scene. So we'll get into some ways to do that, as I mentioned, like importing into Level. Or for importing an entire scene, there's another tool called Datasmith. It's a better option for that. That's something we'll get into in future classes. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the few basic rules before you start exporting. So first of all, asset organization and naming conventions, they're really important for keeping your project easy to manage. And I've also included a link to a style guide. I do have this label as UV4, but it comes up. It's for Unreal Engine 5 as well. I can show you a quick link on that. This is what it looks like. It's the Unreal Engine style guide for naming conventions, and there's quite a bit in here, so I'm not going to get too deep into this at all. But when we get into naming conventions here, I'll show you some of this. These are some of the basic sort of prefixes and such that you want to look at. So SK for skeletal mesh Bob, if you had a character named Bob. If a material that was for Bob, you could say M_Bob. T_Bob for, say, the diffuse texture. T_Bob_N for the normal. And say you had another diffuse for a different look to them, say an evil Bob look. And so on and so forth. So here's some ways to say you have specific a certain amount of static meshes that say there's multiple versions. So here's just kind of a quick preview on some of the different naming conventions that you can take a look at. So it's good, especially if you're working on a team, to work with those naming conventions so everybody has a kind of a uniform way of naming everything, and that they're easier to find when you're searching and such. So it's also good practice to make sure that the origin of your mesh is in the center of the scene before you export, and that the units and scale are appropriate. So we're going to get into that, doing some examples in Maya today. And then also combining meshes. It's a good practice if there's no moving parts. You might want to do that just to keep things more uniform as well. And scaled objects should be reset to 1:1:1, especially if they're scaled in a non-uniform way. So you don't want to have things stretched out and try to bring them in. It's going to cause you problems. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward into units and scale. So when you're working with your DCC, you want to mind your system units. Got a couple of screenshots here of Maya, and these are the settings that you're going to want to have. You're going to want to make sure that you're that you're using centimeters. So the Unreal Engine's unit of measurement is a centimeter. So the one Unreal unit is a centimeter. So you want to make sure that I believe Maya kind of defaults to centimeters anyway, but just to make sure that that's set there. We will go through that in a moment. And then you want to make sure that your system units are set up as well. So here's a couple of different spots here where you're going to want to look at just to make sure that you're set up before you get started with your DCC. And this is, again, avoid scaling issues. So if you do happen to be working in inches, say, for instance, you get something that maybe another team member, or maybe you got off online that was in inches, you can scale this on import when you're bringing it into Unreal Engine. I'll show you how to do that. And so basically, to convert the inches to centimeters, you're just basically going to do a 2.54 scale on that. So I'll show you that in just a moment. And so when you're doing your imports into Unreal Engine, you're going to be seeing a couple of these different dialog boxes. So, of course, as I mentioned, the FBX file format has a lot of information that comes along with it. And so while you're bringing in different assets, you're going to look at some different things here. There's some things that you can alter on import. So things like generating collisions, you can do that on import. Unreal will do that for you. You can convert your meshes to nanite, which is great. You can convert. So here there's a spot where you can actually type in the multiplier. I think it's not in the screenshot here, but you can also generate light map UVs, which we will be getting into in a moment, towards the end of class actually. And then you can combine meshes, you can control the normals, control transforms, convert materials, and a whole lot of other things. So just keep that in mind, even though it's best to really get everything sort of set up in your DCC before you export. There are a lot of things that you can do when you're importing. So naming conventions. You're going to want to adopt a naming convention that works for you. Using the style guide is great. That way, everybody's on the same page. If you're trading assets or working with other people, it's a good habit to get into. And aside from assets like materials and textures, you want to make sure that your DCC projects and scenes are well organized. And so here's an example here of this zodiac graph that we're going to be working with in a moment. And so here's an example here of, say, when you're working with the DCC and you start creating your modeling, you're bringing in primitives. It's going to start naming things like box 001, 002, etc., rectangle 001, 02, etc., shape 001. And it's going to be difficult to really keep track of later on. You're not going to really know what each of those objects are when you bring it in. So it's best to rename those if you can. So let's see. So things like these generic names, it would be much better to have something that is relevant to, say, the object here at hand. So in this case, we've changed box 001 to bench 01, bench 02. We have handles here, so handle 01 through 05. And then we've got this object here, which we call the floater, and the keel, the hand grip 01 through 3, the hull. So that way, when you're looking through your asset later on when it's imported, you're going to be able to see these things. You're going to be able to identify them a lot better. So naming conventions like this are going to be great to do in your DCC, ideally before you export. So material IDs. So every object is going to have at least one material ID. And as you probably know by now, Unreal starts with 0 on everything. So in this case here, we've got element 0 through element 4. So those are 5 different elements. And they correspond to these 5 different material IDs and these different objects here that they've been assigned to on the asset. So material IDs, they help determine which polygon faces get which textures applied to them. The more material IDs a mesh has, the more expensive it's going to be to render. And each material ID requires that the model go through a separate render pass. So some things you can do to kind of mitigate that. One is using material instances, which we'll get into in a bit. And of course, if you there's a couple of ways to do things. You can actually use one material that sort of divides the different portions of the asset into different sections of the texture maps. And we'll talk about how we'll show some examples of that as well. Now, pivot points. So this is something that that can, if they're not set up right, it can be kind of a pain in the butt, especially if you're trying to move things around and rotate things. So Unreal Engine uses, pivot points to determine where the object's going to be placed, first of all, on the level when you drop it in. And it's also going to determine how the point that transforms are performed around. So for rotation, as you see here in this example, you've got a pivot point at the bottom center of this forklift object. And this will work fine if you're going to be rotating. The object is going to rotate around the center point there. Since that pivot point is on the ground, it's been exported that way. The object will snap right to the ground when you first bring it in. And there's a method to have it snap to the ground if it's not set up right. We'll show you that. It's ideal for any given asset to have that origin when you're exporting from your DCC to be at 0, 0, 0 in the world. So right there at the center of the grid. And if the pivot point's centered, but the object is offset from the center of the world, then it's going to relocate to 0, 0 on Unreal Engine. So basically, you want that pivot point to be where it's supposed to be, so that way when you bring it into Unreal, it's gonna be where you drop it and where you want it, and it's gonna rotate and move and scale based off of that pivot point. So triangle count. So it's always good to keep an eye on triangle count. We'll show you how to just to show that in your DCC. You want to keep your triangle count in check. Small details either. And you want to check to make sure that as you're working on your models, just make sure that you're not getting too out of hand. Now, Unreal Engine can display millions of triangles. It's not typically a problem, especially if you're using nanite, but it's just good to take some, use some planning so that you're not really doing overkill, especially based on how far that your objects are going to be from your camera and how much screen space they're taking up. If you have something that's in the distance, you don't want to have it be in high detail because it's not going to be necessary. And then that also kind of gets into things called LODs, levels of detail, which we'll be talking about as well. And so if you do, say, have an object that is close to the camera in some scenes, in some shots, but further away in others, the LOD system can sort of mitigate that for you so that as the object's further away is taking up less screen space, there'll be less detail involved. And we'll get into that in a moment. So with triangle counts, levels of detail, here's a kind of our explanation of levels of detail. Here's where you would take a look at the way that these work if you're setting this up. There's different ways you can do this. You want to control the details of the mesh based on whether your camera's near or at a distance. The details can be, they're not going to be perceived in distant objects, like I had mentioned. You want to use low quality versions when they're further away. Now you can generate LODs manually or use the automatic generator. There's a couple ways to do that. You can do that in import, or you can do that in your DCC, or you can do that later on in the static mesh editor. So here we've got our FBX import options. So while you're importing your FBX, you can go into the static mesh LOD group and choose a group, and these groups will generate a set of LODs for you automatically on import. Or you can go ahead and choose to import the mesh LODs that have already been set up in your DCC. Your LOD settings, you can say how many LODs that you want, if you want to put them in manually. And you can even go into the percentage of triangles per each LOD setting. There's also, within the static mesh editor, there's a way to sort of look at the levels of detail based on color. And this is a lot easier to see if, say, you're zooming out, like say you're pulling your camera away from the object and you want to see, the detail change. Sometimes you can't really tell because you're not seeing that much of the object. So you can select an LOD manually on the drop down, and you can see, like for instance here, The lowest number LOD0 is going to be the highest detail, and then LOD1, LOD2, LOD3. You can see that the amount of tries goes down, the amount of details goes down as your LOD number goes up. If you want to see how that's working by looking at it through the camera and moving your camera away from the asset, you can set this here. I'll show you that in a moment. And this will, it'll change the color of the object based on the that's been sort of updated. All right, so let's see, so missed anything here. Yeah, it's the triangle decimation level. Coloration mode is this here. Right. So nanites. So again, this is a new feature from Unreal Engine 5, and it allows you to handle millions of triangles without breaking a sweat. So it's great. It can display those millions of triangles in real time, but it only draws a handful of those on screen because it's able to see kind of where the camera is looking and you know, how far you are away and everything. And so it'll basically draw the highest quality necessary for the situation. So it's really great. It's quite intuitive. It's really an update on the LOD system. It's better than the LOD system. And this can be enabled. You can enable the nanite in the content browser by clicking on your asset, or when you're importing through the FBX import dialog box, as I had shown earlier, or with inside of the static mesh editor. And so here, this is here. You can right-click, enable nanite for selected. You can build nanite in the import options, enable nanite support, apply changes, and then this is showing the different. If you were to display at different distances, you can see triangles drawn based on if you're taking a look at your nanite for debugging optimization purposes. So before I get into modeling tools, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at Unreal Engine and close that quick. And here we've got Unreal Engine open here. So this is the project that I have up on SmashCut, but this is really just a third-person template. It's super simple. You can get that very easily in the if you were to create a new project, you can basically just select the inside of the games section, the games templates, the third-person template, and this is you know, one of the basic ones that's used all the time. And the reason I'm using this one, you can always import things from. So if you were to go new project and go to games, you'll see third person here. So this on SmashCut, I've also got in that zip folder. There's another zip that has the assets in there, and this, if you wanted, the project itself already has the assets in there, but I'm gonna be showing you how to import them in. So if you just started with a blank third-person template, that would be fine too. You just want to grab those the assets zip folder and extract those and take a look at those. So this is where you get that. I know you guys already know how to create a new project, so I'm not going to get into that. So here's our third-person template, all fresh. These are the assets here. So first thing I want to do is just take a look at two meshes imported with different units. So we talked about making sure units and scale are appropriate. So I've got the folder here for the assets. So I've gone ahead and exported those. I've extracted those from the zip folder, and so they're all here. You'll notice if you go into there that you'll see we've got a couple of different DCC file folders here for you to use if you want. but we're only going to be really working in this class here with the FBX folder, and then at the end of the class we'll Gaunt, which is the skeletal mesh that we're going to be looking at. So let's go ahead and go into FBX, and I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to drop in a couple of different static meshes, FBXs. So we're going to look at the Zodiac, which is that raft that we were looking at before. So here we've got it as centimeters. So I'm going to drop it in. I can drop it right into the content browser here. And normally I would put it into a folder. I've already got them in here, as I said. So I'm just going to kind of be showing you as an example here. But you'll notice that if I drop it in, it'll automatically bring up this FBX import option box. And usually what I want to do each time, just get in a habit of saying reset to default. Click on this before you get started, because you may have changed some settings here on your last import. And you don't want to change something different. For instance, say you change the the scale or the import resolution or anything, or the way that the materials are coming in. So always do that first, just to be sure. And again, there's a lot of things in here that you can do with this. So I'm just going to go ahead and say import. And this is the centimeter version. There we go. And so again, I would put this in its own folder. It's already here in the FBX folder here, but and so we've got it here. I've got the see if I can bring both of these in at the same time. So it's got an engine that comes with it too. You'll notice if I grab both and drag them in at the same time, they'll come in relative to where they're supposed to be, relative to each other. So this is our basic one material. Well, it's got a material for the engine and material. And you'll see that in this material, we've got it set up where each of these texture between the different sections of the raft. So that's different from a multi-material setup, which we'll show in a second. And then I want to also bring in the inches version. So say, for instance, you're working with someone or maybe that exported it as inches, and you weren't sure, you didn't know, you bring it in. One of the reasons I like to use the third-person character template for this is because I can kind of tell. So I'm going to bring in the other one here, and you'll see that in inches it is much smaller. So, but maybe it's hard to tell exactly because you're not really comparing it to something else. If you brought this in by itself, it might look like it's the right size. But if I were to go ahead and click here on play and do a little play test here, I can see that this one, that looks about the right size of a raft that this character would use. And you'll see the collisions are kind of nice. Her foot's going up onto the keel there. The bench, but this one obviously is not going to work, right? So so that's a quick way to look at these things and see, if you wanted to bring it in. And you can always, if you say have another project, say a film project or something, and you wanted to have a character brought in so that it's all set up to play like that, you can go in and you can say, let's see, I believe it's, you can go into here and say, you can add, if you import, the it's birds. Different what's it, import content. Yeah, if you say import content, you can bring in stuff from a third-person character template, and you just say you want to bring in the third-person character, and then that'll bring it into another project if you need to. So obviously this inches version is not working for us. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that one, that set. And I'm going to show you a quick way to import that same one and convert on import. So we'll go ahead and take this again. We'll try to bring in, and of course, I'm dragging it in because it's the easiest way, but you can also go import here or import up here. Many ways to import. So here's in this one here, as I said, if you go with 2.54 scale on the import. Oh, sorry, it's this one here. Import uniform scale. So on import uniform scale, if you do the conversion, it's 2.54 for the from inches to centimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and import that. And here we go. And so if I drag this one in, you'll see that now I've converted it properly. So say that happens where you've got it, you don't have to go back into your DCC to fix that. You can simply just do that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all these. I just wanted to show you those for that example. And I'm going to go ahead and let's take a look at setting everything up. Well, actually, I showed you the material ID really quick. So let me go into the other raft. I have this one here, and you'll see that this one has multiple materials assigned to it. So this is another way to set it up. So the first way was having the material as one, where it splits. Each texture map is split to the different sections. So you've got a section for each of the different parts, and then this one here is sort of simple materials for each one. If I wanted, I could take this material and say I wanted to have that wood texture on the benches. I could take this and this material and drop it in there, and then I'd have that. So it's assigned to the specific parts of the object. All right. So go ahead and delete that. Just wanted to show you that before we went anywhere. So I'm going to go to Maya. And so here we are with in Maya, and I've got a new untitled project here. Now, a couple of things mentioned before in the slide deck was that units and scale, I just want to make sure that everything's set up right. So right here, I've got this grid, grid here, and I'm not, basically this is out of the box what the settings are in Maya. So if I'm working with Unreal, I know I'm going to be importing to Unreal or exporting to Unreal. I want to set a couple things up first. So first, I want to go into my display grid option box. Display grid option box, and so the default is 12 units by lines every 5, and then 1. So ideally, I would change this to 100, and then 10, and then 1 subdivisions. So if I do that and apply, then I'm going to get a bigger grid. I'm going to get a grid that's going to be set up a little bit better. And then the other thing I want to do is I want to get into my Windows settings, preferences. So Windows settings and preferences. And then here, I've got a lot to choose from. I'm going to go to settings down here. And I want to make sure that just to make it a little easier, I mean, Unreal will convert it. It's smart. It knows when coming out of Maya to switch it to Z up. But just to be sure, it's nice to go ahead and switch this to Z up for Unreal if you're going to be going into Unreal. And I believe that this is going to be generally centimeters as default, but just to make sure that your working units is centimeters as well. And so save that. And now I can bring in objects, and they're gonna come in as in the centimeter units, and we're gonna have the grid all set up for us. So another thing you can do if you want to keep an eye on your triangles is to go to display, heads up display, and then I'm gonna look at poly count here. Okay, so here we go. So this is going to show my triangles and such. So if I were to bring something in, I could bring in, say, that zodiac inches, and now we've got you can see the all the information here. You see our vertices, edges, faces, tris, UVs, and if I hit 6, I'll see the my shading display, so I can see my my materials. And so this is a good way to set up. And let's see. So if I want to say, for instance, since I dropped this in, actually, as inches, you saw it was the same one that was inches before. If I export it, this all selected, export selection, and bring this to drop this in one of the folders over here. Let's give this a moment to read my external drive. All right, and we're going to go into Maya files, and I'm just going to drop this in as raft to CM. And so I'll export that, and this was inches, and since I converted my units to centimeters, should be able to drop this in. So I'm going to go into my Maya files and raft to CM. Drop that in. And again, so I got the 2.54 scale. I'm going to reset that, import, and I believe this should have converted for me. Yep. All right. So just to be sure, and again, when you're playing, make sure that you're playtesting selected viewport or one of these, not simulate. You can that does the simple thing. So the hotkey on that too is Alt P. And so once again, you see here, I've converted that inches into centimeters. So I did it that way. So next up, we have, okay, so that was setting up Maya and showing you how you can fix your, the different ways we can fix our units. Now, next, I want to get into pivot points. So, if I go into, so there's a couple of different ways we can do this. Of course, we can do it I'll show you how we can do it in Maya first. Again, it's usually best to fix things in your DCC before you export. So I'm going to go ahead and take this forklift. We've got a forklift FBX here in the FBX folder with pivot bad. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that one and drop it in. And it may look like, well, where'd it go? And that's because the pivot's bad. Let's give it a second to import. Okay, here we go. So it's way over here. And so the pivot, basically it was exported like this, where the pivot points here. And this is not, obviously not going to be good. If I rotate it, I'm going to have issues. So what we can do in Maya is we can go to let's see. So if I go in Maya, I can let me go here and I'll hit F in each of these to frame up. And I want to first bring my my asset to the center. So I'm going to try to just kind of bring it basically to the center here. And to change the pivot point in Maya, I'm going to grab this and I'm going to say, I'm going to hold down, I'm going to click and hold down D, and then X, right here, E, and X, and I'm going to drag this over here like this. It's not quite exactly right. It's about right here, and then so click B. And then I'm going to go into another viewport here where I'm going to look at the side view here. So I want to make sure that I'm also basically on the grid here. And so, oops, again, so I'm going to click that. Basically put it there. And then I'll look at this one here. Let's make sure we're good. Frame that up. And we're basically good here. So we can do that, and then we can export it. But the thing is we've got, sure this is good in all the different viewports, looks good. Okay, so we can do this, but the thing is we've got our, if we export it like this, it's still going to be translated weird. So we've got our pivot point basically fixed, but we want to do a couple things. We want to go to no, and I think we could have went to modify center pivot as well. So that would have put it up. Yeah, that would have been a quicker way. So we could have basically brought it to the center, and then we could have we can take it from there and bring it down to oops. And if we hold down X, it will snap to the grid. So so what we want to do next though is we want to make sure that we get rid of these transforms. So we want to go to modify freeze transforms. So modify freeze transforms. That clears this. And then we want to also delete all by type history. So we'll go to edit, delete all by type history, and then that'll set us up so we can then export from there. And then we should be set up. So we can say, let's see, got a couple of these already in here. Fork. I'll say pivot fix. Fix. right? So you can do that. And then that way we've got it kind of set up that way, but it's really easy to do it in Unreal as well. So I was actually going to start with Unreal. Let me start with that, or go into Unreal and show you how to do that, do it there. So if we go into our FBX folder and we take that same forklift pivot bad, drag it in. Okay. And then we want to make sure we set to default, make sure everything's set up to defaults. And I'm going to import. I'm going to drop this in, and you'll notice that, right away that it's just not, pivot's really bad. So the first thing I would do is I want to make sure that this is it's snapped to the ground. So normally if the pivot was set up correctly, it would. Now, basically what you want to do, if you've got an end key on your keyboard, you hit end, and normally that would have snapped it, but I'm not sure what was changed or not. But basically if you hold down, I believe it's function. Let's see, function end. Yeah, there it goes. So the function key and the end key, and that will snap it to the ground. So you want to start off with it like that. Now I'm going to start with the old school way of changing the pivot. This isn't really the greatest way, but if I go to my top view and I look at this, see I'm way off. What you'll do is you go to Alt middle mouse button, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key and middle mouse button, and I'm going to drag no, just Alt click drag is going to duplicate. So Alt middle mouse button. Sure it's not working. Try it in a different view. Expected view here. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, maybe I need that little wheel there. Let me try it again. Okay, there we go. It's weird. Sure, it's not working. Else. Anyway, interesting. We'll double check your should be Alt middle mouse button to do this. I'm not sure why. Huh. Anyway, good news is there is a new way, and because this way is kind of frustrating anyway. So I will show you the new way. So what we have is we have modeling tools, which are really great. So I want to show you that. Which is actually our next subject here on our slide deck. So we can repair different things, mesh problems without going back to our DCC app. We can select triangles individually by material or element or smoothing groups, change pivot point placement, which is what we're about to do. Delete or flip faces. We can add material elements like submaterials. We can do these, all this, but we need to first make sure that it's enabled in our plugins. So it's not always, a lot of the templates, it's enabled by default, but if not, you want to make sure that you have that set up. So, and here's where we're going to be relooking pivots. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So we'll go ahead and go back over to Unreal Engine. Wondering if maybe it has something to do with my computing. Anyway, if we're not sure if we have our modeling tools, so this is where you find them right here. And you can do Shift-5 to get to them quickly, or you can use this drop down. But say if you don't see it here, you want to make sure that you go to Edit, Plugins, and you can type in Modeling right here. And so you want to make sure that this is selected. And of course, if it's not and you select it, you're going to need to restart the engine to enable it. So mine's already there. So I'm going to go ahead and select modeling, and you'll notice these pop up here. One of the things I tend to do here is I grab this and drag it down so that you'll see it, see more of it here, and then you're going to kind of work with both of these two menus at the same time. So the first thing I want to do is grab the pivot. So the pivot, it's under transform pivot. And what I'm going to do is you'll see when I select that, it's going to go ahead and select the pivot with this sort of universal gizmo of all three. And then it's going to, you're going to see this little, these positions, these hot positions here, which really great. All you need to do is click on center, click on bottom, and there we go, 2 clicks. So, and then you can just say accept. What's cool about that is actually gone ahead and it's affected it for the asset itself on the asset level. So if I bring in the next one, you'll see that it's fixed it for that one as well. I'm gonna try this one more time. Let's see here, something at the top. Let's see, Alt. Let me see, we're gonna select Alt, Google mouse button. What's going on with that? Why it's not working? But yeah, typically you would just be able to grab this and Alt middle mouse button and drag this out. But the problem is once you've done it, once you've spent the time to make it all perfect, then you have to. Yeah, there it goes. All right, so I'm not sure why it's having issues here, but you grab it like that, and you Alt middle mouse button, and you can drag the. It just seems to be having a little glitch for me here. But you would have to then right click once you got it where you want it. And you'd have to set it to tell it you'd have to say pivot set as pivot offset. So so you can imagine like going into the different views and then getting it to just where I want it to be, dragging it around, and then right clicking and say reset pivot offset. And then once I did that, it still wouldn't have updated the other versions inside of the content browser. So that was the old way, and this obviously modeling tools is much better. So there's no point to really be working with that old method anyway. So for some reason that wasn't working. Sorry about that. But all right, so those are some ways to work with the pivots, to fix the pivots. And next we'll get into, let me go back over to the slides. So here's what we just did. We went ahead and selected that. We said center bottom, and then it updated. We said accept. The pivot point was corrected. Now next we're going to get into modeling tools. So this is really fun. We can actually do a lot of things that we can do in our DCC inside of Unreal Engine. So inside of those same modeling tools that we just showed. But I do see that we're about 10 after 9, which is about halfway through the class. So I think this might be a good time to take a quick break. So we'll go ahead and continue. Back to modeling tools. So we talked already about these first couple of things here, setting it up, changing the pivot, and now we'll get into some of the other things we can do with modeling tools. So we can change face angles, visibility. We can select things by material, etc. And then we can also grow, invert, or shrink selections. We can flip normals. We can delete or separate triangles. Create polygroups, and then once you've created a polygroup, you can then manipulate that. So you make a selection and create a polygroup, and then you can manipulate that. Here's a little screenshot here of the selection type that you can use. And you'll go in here under try model, try select, and select which one you want. You can edit the meshes once you made your selection. We're going to go ahead and change up the rim of the forklift and make, it's a little basic. The rest of the wheel looks pretty good, but the section looks a little basic. So we're going to make it a little bit more interesting. So we'll make a selection and we'll do some scaling and this can extrude. Some of the things you can do with that selection is extrude inset, cut faces, flip faces, a lot of other stuff. Some examples here. You can also add material slots. So this is great. So say, for instance, you're like, hey, you know what? I made a little change, or maybe there's a section of the asset that I'd like to have a new material ID slot added. So you can make your selection. You can add a new material element. So here's an example here. And then you can assign a new material to it. And we'll go ahead and do that as well once we've edited that, and then we'll get into light maps. So let me go ahead and pop Unreal open again. So we've got our forklift here. A couple things real quick too before we get into modeling, continue with modeling tools. I wanted to show you that these here are, really basic materials. Obviously, it looks kind of like a child's toy, kind of like plastic. Obviously, we've got some PBR materials in here for these that are much better. So if the thing is I can, drag these into my different material slots. You'll notice that they've been labeled pretty well, so it's pretty easy to line up. I've got forklift body. I'm going to drag that into forklift body. And you'll see that now instead of that plasticky look, this looks a bit more realistic. It's got some nice scratchy stuff in there and nice little PBR material. So I'm going to do that with the rest of these. Here's cage. I'm going to drop it to cage. Here is the interior. I'm going to drop that into interior. Again, naming conventions are great. That's why naming all these properly is useful. It would take a lot longer otherwise. So the lift, I'm going to drop that into the lift, and then the wheels, and then we've conveniently got this other material here that we're gonna drop in later. But you'll see now that this vehicle, this forklift, looks a lot more realistic, and that's great. So PBR materials are definitely much more high quality and much more realistic looking. The only thing is if I do it this way, this is not gonna change the asset in my content browser. It's not gonna fix it for me. See, if I drag another version of it in, you'll see that it's back the way that it was. So so what do I do to fix that? Well, I'm going to do this on the static mesh level. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, double click it. It's going to open up my static mesh editor. And I'm going to drop these PBR materials in here. So if I go ahead and kind of drag this over so I can kind of see both, go into my PBR. And I'm basically just going to do the same thing I just did, but on this static mesh level instead. So here we go. We got the body. We got the cage. That's the third one. This a little bit more so you can see. It's updating in my in the scene as we're doing that. The level. So the lift. And then we've got the interior. And we've got the wheels. All right, so there we go. So now we'll just hit save. And now we've gone ahead and updated that. So, so there we go. And then now if we drag in a new version of that, that asset, it's all set with our PBR materials. So go ahead and delete these extra ones. Now let's go ahead and get into the modeling tools. So, all right, so here's a project here where I've already gone ahead and done this. So I basically just extruded this object here and sort of scaled it in. See if it'll work over here on this one. So that's sort of the final version of what we're looking for right there. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and select this one, and I'm going to go into modeling tools. I'm actually technically in 5.2 now, it's in 5.1 on the other one. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with it, but I'm going to drag this modeling toolbar down here like I did. Take this modes thing here. I'm going to select that. I'm going to go to try select, and I'm going to grab one of these rims, my brackets down so I can get a little bit better. And I'm going to hit grow. Let's just shrink that a little bit. Just want to have only that part. And then I'm going to go to poly edits. Select that. Oh, wait a minute. Let me go back to try select. I needed to make a poly group. Okay, there we go. So we got that. And I believe I got the whole, no, I don't. Let me try that. Grow. And then I'm going to shrink that down to there. Section shrink down. Try to see. So I'm going to get less of a selection tool there, and then I'm just going to hit grow once. And we got it. And then I'm going to say I'm going to create a poly group out of that. There we go. And then accept. Then poly edit. Okay. So I've got my poly group, and now I'm just going to go ahead and scale this. This tool should allow me to scale it as well. I'm not sure why it's not working. Oh, it updated there. Okay, there we go. So let me scale it in a little bit, and let's wait state. There we go. Otherwise, second. You get the idea. So basically, you can do some basic editing here. And once this is, okay, so you can see I did a little edit there. It's not exactly what I was looking to do, but I can extrude, scale, select that poly group, and then make that happen. And then if I go over here into materials, which is the next thing I wanted to show you, I can go edit material, and I can still see that the different material slots are available here. If I want, I can add a new one. So I've selected a new, I've created a new slot here, and I can grow that selection. And then I can take this and I can say the one that I want here is 5. So I want to select 5, which doesn't have anything in there. And I want to go ahead and drag that into here. And then I can assign that to the selection. So assign active material. And there we go. So I can say edit materials accept. And that will now have the new material slot with the new material selected, or the new material assigned to it. So again, apologize for my computer acting a little strange here, but that is the materials. So we've gone ahead and changed the pivots with the modeling tools. We've done some basic editing. There is a lot you can do with that. And as far as creating new material slots as well. So hopefully that gives you an idea of some of the power of the modeling tools. And then next we're going to get into light map UVs. So this is where we're at here. This is the basically so UVs. Basically, so regular UVs. I think most of you folks are probably familiar with texture UVs. They're basically, they're like a flattened out image of what will wrap around your 3D object. So like a soda can printed before it's folded into a 3D shape, or like say an orange peel, for instance. Say that gives the orange peel the orange its color and texture. If you were to say peel that orange peel shape away, then you might get something like this, where little pieces that kind of all fit, so can wrap around a sphere. And so with light map UVs, you're actually looking to see which pixels the texture and lighting are going to be, the lighting information is going to be associated with. So in 3D objects, you've got X, Y, and Z. And so with since X and Y in a 2D layout is already sort of used as letters, U and V are what is used to talk about horizontal and vertical. So U is horizontal and vertical is V. And so with light map UVs, you actually can take the lighting information of your scene and bake it into the texture. So it's actually pretty helpful. If you're, it does take a little bit of time to set it up, but it's worth the investment. So they're saved in a second UV channel. So you've got your regular UV channel first, which is usually UV 0, and then UV 1 would be the one for light maps. So now you may want to check out the naming conventions as well, because say for instance in Max it'll call it UV channel 2, whereas in Unreal it'll be UV channel 1 for the light maps. And with light maps, so with regular UVs, you can actually have. I'm going to show you in Maya real quick. So in Maya, you can set up your UVs, and it's basically going to have a texture where it's going to be a flattened out image like this, where you can you're going to see the faces of the object that are in this sort of 2D map out, but it's going to also have potentially some faces that are outside of that. And that's fine because this UV will repeat itself over and over again. And so you can have those outside of it. You can also, if you have something on your texture that is, say, like a symbol or something that you're using more than one time, also have it repeat. Let me show you real quick here. I've got an asset to bring in here. I've got a dumpster with no light maps. I'm going to drop it in, and I'll hit 6 for the texture here, and then get into my let's see, I'm going to go into my UV editor here. Oops. So UV editor. You'll see it here. Shrink this down a little bit. And you'll see that if I select edges and such, or actually let me select faces instead, that you'll see that they show up, the ones that they're assigned to here in the UV. And you also see that here I've got actually show this with flat lighting so you can see this a little bit better. So basically, if I look here, I can see that I've got like a symbol here, a number, and I'm using the same one for this side here. And so using this space over and over again, overlapping, is fine. It's actually very helpful with doing this, so that it's sort of, you've only got so much real estate here. So the larger each of these selections are, like say for instance, if I were to select the top of this, which is pretty big face, it's going to be, you've got a pretty big space here. So the larger the space, the more detail you're going to, the higher the resolution is. So so it's a little bit, this is how the regular UV is set up. So if I wanted to create a light map UV, you'll see here, if I go to my UV sets, I've only got one set here. So if I want to create a new one, then I can basically go in here and I can say right click UV, create, let's go to UVs and say automatic mapping here, and so I can select, say, so by default, if I were to do this, I could project, and I need to select this as well. So let me project that. And so I've created this here. And but you'll see that there's a lot of little pieces that are the initial creation isn't very good. So I'm going to right click again, and I'm going to do this again and create automatic option box. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change this to 512. No, sorry, 64. And I'm going to customize this to like a 0.9. And I'm going to project that. And this is a little bit better. So you'll see here, it's sort of like projecting, it's creating this map. And if I were to go ahead and export this, then I'm going to have a light map UV that shows up in Unreal. So if I go back to Unreal and I go ahead and delete these guys. And I want to go into my content here. Okay. And I want to show you the dumpster. So I've got these already sort of brought in here. So here's what the light map UV created. So you'll see here, I've got my UV channel 0 has got this all set up for my regular UVs. And then my UV channel 1 is, now this was created with bringing it in as through Maya. And I have this other one here with no light map UVs. And so this one, actually, the other one was Unreal. So this one was brought in with Unreal, creating light map UVs on the import, and you'll see that this is much cleaner. It's bigger. The spacing is better. There's not as much little pieces. So that's kind of an example there. So not really all that important, honestly. I mean, it's good to have the light map UVs, but generally, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, the light map UVs are not as big of a deal. But that's basically how you would go ahead and create them. So I just want to show you how to do that. And then next, I want to get into collisions. So this one can be really useful, especially when you are dealing with if you're going to be creating things like with take recorder, where you're going to actually be running around with your character and such. So we've got let me bring in see, we've got a simple wall. So I'm going to bring in a simple wall first. I'll put it in there. We'll put it just here. So I'm going to bring a simple wall in. And you'll see that when I do this, it's going to have a restart the default, import, and this simple wall. If I were to, so there's a couple things here. If I were to look at collision, if I were to show collision, you'll see that this wall actually has it's not set up right. It's there's no hole here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play and show you. So if I were to run over here and I can bump into this, it's got collision, but if I try to walk through it, it's not going to work. So the most basic thing I can do here is I can go into my static mesh editor, and I can go into to change it to basic, use complex as simple. So also here in the collision or in the static mesh editor, I can look at, I can show certain things. I can say like show simple collision and show complex collision. And you'll see the complex collision is everything, you know, it's more complex. It's showing, it's only making the collision for what the actual mesh is. So I can say I can go down to collision and I can say use, if I go down to where it says collision complexity, and I can say use complex collision as simple. If I do that and hit save, that's the quickest, easiest way for a simple object like this to just sort of punch a hole in that and just use that. So I'll show you here that if I do that, now I can run through it. I've got collision still on the rest of it. Now, another way I can bring in the, so if I bring in a little bit more complex of an object, like say this colonnade, then I can, if I import that and drop it in, you'll see this one's a little bit more complex. It's got rounded features, but again, you're going to see that it's yeah, I can't run through it because it's not been set up right. So what I can do is I can take this into my static mesh browser, and then in this one static mesh editor, and with this one I can so I'll show my collision, and I'm going to remove my collision, and then I'm
Seems that we have a small crash. Phil, if you would, or you froze for a while there, if you would repeat yourself.
Oh, sorry about that. So what I did is I brought in this colonnade object, and it was you know, set up the same way where I couldn't go through it, and so, but since it's more complicated, it's more rounded and everything. I couldn't just punch the hole out as easy. So what I did is I opened up in the static mesh editor here, and I'll go through this real quick again. So I went to collision and I said remove collision. So I got rid of all the collision, and then I went ahead and went to collision and I said add box simplified collision. So if all I want to do is just make collision on something really quick, this would be the way to go. But with this one, I need to actually kind of have it where I can collide. So I want to grab this and sort of scale my collision, and I'm going to take off my snaps here on the scale. And just want to slide it so it's just about the right size for this. And I'm going to put this on here, and then I'm going to hold Alt, drag, and I'm going to put another one here. Now I could also create a third one for this if I wanted to, say if I'm going to be running around on top or whatever. Probably wouldn't need to, but just in case, I can do that. So I can basically create a simple collision this way. And if I save that, and then I go back out, then I can Alt-P to play. And now if I go through, I can go through, I can bump into this. And so that's all working. And then if I wanted to, say, drag this over here, and also if you hold Shift, you can follow with the camera. I want to do that. I could scale it to where it's where I could say walk on the top of it. And if I did that, you can see that the other the collision I made on the top of it will work as well. So we go. All right, so that's that one. And then say you need something that's a lot more complicated of a collision, you can work with something else. I'm going to go in here and grab my my cart and cart damaged. I have my collision. So you can see here that on this one, it's kind of just basic. It's not really that close to the shape, whereas this one's a little bit closer. And if I were to play test this one, you can see that with this one here, I can't really get close, jump up on top of it. I'm kind of floating on top of it. Whereas with this one here, this one has a little bit of a collision set up there. I can kind of step up on it a little bit. So it's a little bit better. But if I wanted to make this even better, I could go in and take this. So this was actually created, this UCX in Maya. So if I go back to my my slide deck here, you'll see that so I've gone ahead and done this. You can import on import. Try to speed up a little bit here since we're a little bit behind. If you go into into Maya, you can actually create a box around the object and name it for each section that you want to create collision for, and you would call it UCX underscore the name of the mesh itself, the full mesh name, and then a number for each one. So let me show you that real quick. If I were to go ahead and I'm just going to delete this box here, I'm going to grab the cart damaged here and bring it in, and you'll see that I've got these two UCX underscore and then the name of the object, and then O1 and O2. That's how this was created. So I believe it's Shift H, Control H to hide it. I've got to get some object mode here. So these are what they look like here. So I've got this box here and this box here, and so that's how that's been done. And if I wanted to make this a bit better, I could bring it in Unreal, and I can actually, in the static mesh editor, I can grab this same one, for instance, and open it up in the static mesh editor. And I can actually create a very complex collision for it if I want it to be really a lot more accurate. So say for instance I'm in a game or something and I want to shoot through this hole or whatever, or say I want to be able to like get my character to step into this cart. The way I can do it is I can basically just say collision, remove collision, and then I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say add auto convex collision. Now this is sort of the ultimate collision here. The more I crank this up, the better the collision is going to be, the more accurate it's going to be to the mesh. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, crank it up, and I'm going to hit apply. And it's going to take a little moment here to analyze the entire object here, and it's going to create a collision. It's closely mapped out to the mesh as possible, and then that's going to give us a really accurate collision. So you can see here that's really good. If I were to be shooting, hiding behind this, and I can shoot through the hole here, I could step onto this. I could even step onto this wheel or even this object right here if I was close enough, and I can get in there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and I'm going to get back into here, and now you'll see that this one, if I were to, and I can also right click and say play from here if I want. gotten closer, but anyway, I'm gonna go over to that spot here, and you'll see that, you know, if I walk on this, I can step up on there, I can jump in here, and I'm actually really, you know, I'm down in there pretty good, so I could make it a little more accurate if I want to. I can crank it up a bit more, but you can see I'm basically standing inside of the hole in there, better than before. So that's collision. And let's go ahead and go back into where we're at here. So that's so there's different ways to make collision. You can make collision on import. You can make collision in your DCC with the UCX options, and then there's LODs. I want to show you that really quick too before we get into skeletal mesh. So just real quick, based on time here, I want to show you LODs. Let's grab a forklift here, and we'll open this up. And if you look here, you'll see that I can create LODs by creating a group. I can say, so I could either import it and select LODs like we saw on the slide, or I could select one of these presets and it'll create the amount of LODs for me. And then I've got 4 LODs here. If I want to see those LODs, I can simply select each one individually, and you'll see that as I select these LODs, that see how it's getting less detailed. And if I go down to the lowest one, you can see this looks pretty ugly close up. That chain isn't even connected all the way. But basically from a distance, you're not going to be able to tell. So it's fine. Another way to, just like in the slides, another way to show this is I can go to LOD coloration mode, and I can select that. And then as I go further away, it will change based on the LOD that's been updated. So that's that. And then we'll go ahead and bring in our go into skeletal mesh, which is the next one here. So in skeletal meshes, we're going to want to first import. You're going to notice that we import a skeletal mesh, that it's going to have the main difference between a regular static mesh and a skeletal mesh is that you're going to have this option for the skeleton that you're going to choose. You want to choose that skeleton on your first import of the skeletal mesh, so that it knows that that's assigned. And then you're going to want to have when you bring in your import, you import your animations after that, then it will have that. Sorry, when you first import the skeletal mesh, you're not going to choose a skeleton because it's going to come in with it. But when you bring in animations afterwards, then you're going to want to make sure that it should be assigned to the one that it was made for. But if it doesn't identify it, you'll want to send it that way. So, and then here's an example of that right here for the animations. So let's go ahead and do that. So for that, I'm going to bring in, so everything else was FBX, but for this one, I'm going to go back one set to assets, and I'm going to go to Gaunt. Open up Gaunt. And inside of Gaunt, I'm going to bring in the Gaunt FBX. When I drag him in, you'll see that I've got this spot for a skeleton here. Reset to default. Go ahead and import that. Okay. And then we've got, as you saw from the intro to that animation course, this is the skeletal mesh that we want. We've also got a physics and skeleton here, physics asset and skeleton. Of course, if I were to simulate, see that would drop. So I want to now import some animations for this guy. So delete the old one here. And you'll see I've got my collisions still showing here. So let me take care of that. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the animations. And so I'll just go ahead and grab, say, a few of these, select them, drag them in. And for this one, you'll see it selected my gaunt skeleton for me. It knew that that was what I was looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and import. I'll import all. So those have been imported, then we'll go ahead and grab. So I could just grab one of these and I could grab these and just place them in the level if I wanted to, and I can simulate and show how they go. You'll see this one's root motion, as this one is cycle. And then if I were to go into my gaunt skeleton by itself here, here it is. I can double click on that, bring up this, and I can go into my animations. I can preview each of these. So this is basically just review. Saw this yesterday. So this will bring me to the import into level option. So this one's great because what happens with import into level, you can import an object that has a hierarchy and different moving parts. And so you can actually bring in the controls and bring in the different objects that each have their own pivot points. So to do that, we'll simply go back into Unreal here, and I'm going to say, instead of regular import here, the different places you can import or right-click import, I'm going to go into File and import into level. And then I'm going to go to my Animation Fellowship, go into the assets, I'm going to go into the FBX, and I'm going to grab the forklift centimeter. There we go. So I said open into level. So it's going to ask me kind of like where I want it. I'm just going to say the content folder, and I'm going to click OK. And a couple of things you need to make sure that you do is you want to say import as dynamic, and you want to create one blueprint asset. So this is going to create a blueprint. It's going to have all of our parts in there, and then we're going to be able to use them separately. So it's going to import it actually into the level for me. So there we go. It's over there. We get to delete a bunch of these things here that we don't need. And function end, so I can snap this down. And you'll see that with this selected, you'll see that I've got actually all these parts. I can control the wheels, the wheel controllers here. So if I were to hit rotate, I can animate this separately. If I were to select, say, the steering wheel, steering wheel is right there. I want to make sure that I'm on local space, and then I can rotate the steering wheel. I could even select the lift and move that separately as well. So this way I can animate these things. If I grab them, I grab the asset itself. I can also go into here and say edit blueprint, and you'll see I can do the same thing here. I've got I can select these individually and manipulate them here as well. So that's important to level. So that's great for animating for objects that, like a vehicle like this that has different moving parts. And the last thing is a brand new feature we have here for Unreal Engine 5.1, and it's called interchange. There's lots of options here. We can use it for importing different OBJ files from different applications, different texture types, Alembic files, and then we're working on actually setting that up for exporting out as well into these different file formats. So we've got GLTF, OBJ, different texture types, and so it's format agnostic. It's asynchronous. It's customizable. It works in runtime. And it's really useful. So it's got this great dialog box here that comes up, and it's got a lot of options. So that in order to get it set up, you're going to have to go into your plugins, make sure that you have the interchange editor and framework set up. So a quick example on that. I did set up I did do a quick OBJ file out of Maya that I'm going to import. So I'm going to go ahead and grab say import, and I'm going to go into the Maya files, and I've got this OBJ test that I created in Maya. And so here we've got our interchange pipeline configuration that pops up, and you'll see here that I've got a lot of options. I can change a lot of different things here. I've got skeleton options, static mesh build, and animation stuff. So you've got just a ton of options here, importing materials, what type of materials, etc. So there's a whole bunch we can do here, and if we import that.
Phil, would it make more sense to move into lab at this particular point? I mean, we are 20 minutes over.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I'm not sure why that didn't work, but yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So I will stop my share and apologize for some of those technical difficulties there. But if you guys have any questions, we can go ahead and get into course lab.
Yep. All right. Let me go ahead and close things out, and we'll head over to the lab.